Socially, Bankies are quite distinct from the Glaswegian, despite the nearness of one another, because I rather feel that the Bankie character has been moulded by its product, and the product is largely conditioned and governed his whole attitude towards advancement and expectations. And these expectations clearly Clydebank based rather than based on west of Scotland. We have tended to push goals which are based on Clydebank, rather parochially and rather proud of it.
When you go your holidays, you know yourself, people say you, when you come from Scotland, Glasgow, you say, no, Clydebank, yeah, you're only about 6 miles away from Glasgow. But you always name the place you come from, the place you were born in.
J.G. Thompson's shipyard was set up, the Clydebank yard, which eventually became John Brown's. J.G. Thompson's first yard was in Guthrie, and they decided that they hadn't enough room for very large ships, so they shifted to this district here, which was actually called Kilbowie. And they brought the name of their yard, which in Guthrie was called Clydebank Yard, to Clydebank. So actually it was shipbuilding that brought the name to Clydebank, and Singer set up a factory. Now these two factories employed probably 10, 12,000 people to start with, and this was just a village. So they had to have an influx of people.
Well, the main reason was that Singer, when they first started in Bridgeton.
The first factory was in
And
Bridgeton.
actually the people came with them.
The Bridgeton people didn't form a great part of the population of Clydebank. The Bridgeton people travelled up and down. There were 7 trains left Clydebank for Bridgeton Cross every night and every morning.
الجبراهيم بالراديو Clydebank overlay. We've had the radio overlay for the Blitz, and I'm only a young boy. And we never ever got it, never ever had it. But the radio of all governments.
They had pretty hard times, because I know that when I came in 1924, they were in the middle of a very serious rent strike, and there was evictions and what have you. Things were just beginning to look up, and then the Depression hit them. And following on that, of course, 1939, the war, with the 2 nights, the 13th and 14th of March, which will never be forgotten by the people of Clydebank. On the 2 nights of 13th and 14th of March, there was nothing left, hardly. One of the big dangers was fire. They dropped a lot of fire bombs. And the very first bombs that dropped on Clydebank on the Thursday night dropped on Kilbowie Road. And it put out the water, the gas, electricity, everything. So that when the firemen came along, put on their hoses, it was just a trickle of water. There was nothing they could do about it, really. That fire took away a lot of the buildings. Of all the houses in Clydebank, there was only 6 totally undamaged. And I think by the Saturday morning, if there was 1,000 of us left in Clydebank, that would be about the limit. And they were mostly people associated with the fire service or the warden's service or the first aid.
Almost every house in Clydebank was damaged to the extent that people felt a community interest much more than anyone else in the west of Scotland or Scotland at all.
I was not born a Bankie. I was born in the east end of Glasgow, but I've been in Clydebank most of my life, and I feel very proud I've been a Bankie. I've been associated with the football club, an ex-president of that. I'm now in the bowling club, and we're very proud of the bowling club as well. I've worked in Singer all my life. The main reason we come down from the east end of Glasgow, and I'm proud to have been associated with it.
You tell me any other town in Scotland where you will find 2 golf courses, 7 municipal bowling greens, 3 public libraries, all that kind of thing. You find it in Clydebank and nowhere else in Scotland, I assure you. It's about 5 villages put together, and even though it's a small community in the sense of being of the number of 50,000 people, there still are distinct differences between those units. Now, he's a bank man, a Clydebank man. Basically, I'm a yoker man. You will find that some people would claim to be Dalmuir men, that people would certainly claim to be Duntocher men or Hargate men or Radnor Park men. Our roots are very deep in our own little village which makes up this community. It's simply that you're brought up among a company of people whose company you enjoy, whose forebears you know, whom you like to be with. It's a very, very simplistic thing. A very, very primitive thing in a way.
That's where I came from. Glasgow. Just down the road. And I got married and I stayed in Clydebank. I got married and I stayed here.
And my first job was up the stair when I was 14. My very first job in the restaurant. 15 shillings a week we made. I remember that, my very first job.
There is decline in the shipbuilding industry all over the world, and Clydebank had its share of that. The Singer company is the same. At one time I think they used to employ about 12,000, 14,000 people. Now I believe they employ about 6,000 people.
Scotland should not be thought of as just a place for a holiday. It should be thought of as a place where there are hard-working, inventive, practical people, and principally in the lowlands.
I think probably because of the Clydebank community being largely industrial based, it's tended to be of one class, and it's tended to produce a community because of that one class. There hasn't been the social mobility that you do find in other areas where you have a wide range of occupation, a wide range of interest, a wide range of income, so that you would tend in that other type of community to have divergence of social outlet, divergence of attitude, divergence of activity. Because of our having been cut back by circumstance, financial, by war and ravages of unemployment, economic strains and so on, there has been a tendency for one class largely to dominate this whole area, so that we don't find to the same extent that social mobility that would tend to cut across community interest.
When I came in here in 1936, there was about 7 or 8 boats in the stocks. You know, after it picked up after what you say when the men were all idle during the bad times. Steamers, cargo ships, then they started government work, cruisers, destroyers. Then the war started and they carried right on through the war. The stocks were off for a few years after the war as well, right up to the QE2. And that was it. It went into with this, say, Upper Clyde and Lower Clyde and that, you know. And then that went into liquidation.
The Giners and Podders on are marching frae Clydebank. Come on down and see 'em, he'll be your strength to bide. Come on, Jock and Jimmy, leave the cran and the muckle gantry. Great John McLean's coming home to the Clyde.
Then I believe we go forward to the government with a coordinated demand for not a shell of a shipyard, not an economic graveyard, but a throbbing, surging, Upper Clyde shipbuilders.
Clydebank has always been known for the labour movement, the broad labour movement, with the famous UCS working at Clydebank. But even before then, there was always a staunch labour town.
It's forward to Glasgow Green, we'll march in good order. We'll grip the banner well, that boy is na blade. Hey, look, man, there's Johnny now, that's him, the bonny fechter. Lennon's is fair, old Leibniz is made.
And then the marathon started. I mean, they don't build to the extent that John Brown and Company did, you know.
I would say the very nature, the risk nature of the business which has brought us together over the last 70 years has brought about a community of interest. The Queen Mary, the ship lying in the stocks there, the 534, gave an identity to the community that we had been forgotten. We were desolate. We had got ourselves into a backwater, and because of that, probably a community spirit could develop from that time and perhaps has continued to flourish.
Oh, it's terrible when you see it, you know, the state it is. I mean, look at some of these things, they've been painted for years, some of the crayons. They just paint what they need, use what they need. That's all.
For years they've been protesting about the state of Clydebank. And, you know, when the town was blitzed in 1941, there was a lot of people made homeless. And it's true to say, though, the town may look a wee bit wabbit, etc., but the housing position, you know, has been rectified. That they have built housing schemes, and that was the first important thing, that people housed. As far as the centre of Clydebank is concerned, well, that's true what you're saying, it is a bit of a mess, but they're attempting to remedy that now because they're building a new shopping centre in Clydebank, which is very, very long overdue. There's a shipyard, it used to be famous for the number of characters, and when we look across the road at the pub, Conley's pub, when the shipyard was in its heyday, you would get people, workers over there, and having their pint and their sandwiches, and they'd been under the tables building the boats, as it were, you know. And this, I think, a lot of the characters in the yard are gone, you know, and then that's gone because of the different trends in building ships.
It'll be hectic for us. It is the Clydebank Fair Friday, as they call it, the fair in Scotland. It's the holiday time in England, but they call it the fair in Scotland.
The Welsh and the Irish, for example. Now, these are Celtic nations, and to some extent, the Scot is a Celt. To the extent to which the Irish came into the country. But the difference between the lowland Scot, in my view, and the Irish is that the Scots are a practical people, whereas the Celtics tend to be just a wee bit on the romantic side. We are lowland Scots, and the practical lowlander has been the basis of the Scots economy all through history.
O land that is lost now, which they so dearly held and stood against it, proud Edward's army, and sent him homeward.
But I think, personally, you know, everybody's that wee bit parochial, and they can criticise a place, you know, but don't let anybody else criticise the place. And when people talk about the Bankies or the Glaswegians and that, I think that's the atmosphere, that they belong to a place, and irrespective of what like the place is, that's theirs, you know, and that's the kind of atmosphere.
These are past now, and in the past they must remain. But we can still rise now and be the nation again, and stood against him. Proud Edward's army, and sent him homeward to think again, to think again, to think again.
Well, the social clubs play a great part in the life of Clydebank because
Formerly it was only public houses they could go to, you know. Well, this, in different places they can have a meal, their entertainment, cabaret, have a dance, and I think most of all, they meet new friends, and friends that they haven't seen for donkey's years, they bump into them again. And you find, in fact, last week I remember somebody saying they'd found 2 cousins in here that they never knew they had.
Never forget these wonderful words, the sim, salam. Then when we should climb back where we started with 8 Chinese names.
Clubbable people. They join in, yes, but I would say that this is characteristic of the west of Scotland. But Bank is, because of that couthiness associated with the background of common adversity that they've found over particularly years of depression and then the Blitz jailing people more and more together. That the Bankie tends to be clubbable, he tends to be a sociable person.
There's one fellow up in the night, and he pays for his ticket, and he can't hear a thing, but he just can't hear. He's got a hearing aid, but it's not working, and I think he may be going to hospital next week to try and get it checked again, but he pays his ticket and he can't hear a thing, but he likes the atmosphere.
I think any area which has got high industrial content in it, that the people are politically minded. I probably get as much in common with somebody who works in a factory in Manchester or somebody who works in a shipyard in the Tyne, but that doesn't detract the fact that you were born in a place, you know, and you identify yourself with that particular place. Looking at it from a worker's point of view, I've probably got as much more in common with someone who works in the Hebrides or someone who works in the Borders than I have with many Scotsmen. But nevertheless, you know, you're still born in a country and you're still a Scotsman. You're parochial in your outlook as far as your nationalistic attitude is.
There are not many things in Scotland you could say has got as much industry, heavy industry in the one area as we have. You see, you're plenty around about, you know. Well, at one time there was more industry than what there was workers. That was when old Hitler was at his tricks, you know.
The product, largely heavy engineering, shipbuilding, has developed the character and the social attitudes and social behaviour of the community and how they work and how they expect to live socially and culturally.
I mean, the Englishmen, they just seem to be, they seem to have better jobs than us. You know, I maybe have a better way of living, I wouldn't know, you know, but they seem to have everything gone for them. Bar, you know, the North England's not so good, but I'm saying away down in Southampton area, because I worked there for a year and they had everything going for them there.
If one was out, everybody was out, so that, well, everybody had then more or less to help one another and do what they could to help one another. And I think this helped to make them a close-knit community. As I say, it's still what hits one hits the other, because they're still dependent on the yard and singers. And when the marathon talked in terms of closing down, it was quite a furor. If these places closed down, or if there was a shortage and there was men laid off, well, everybody suffered.
And there's been a complete dearth, for example, of social outlets since the war, and we lost a considerable number of social outlets in the form of cinemas, dance halls, and many other places where people foregathered. And it's taken quite some time in the post-war period to make good that loss, and we're gradually building up. Well, the golf club there has a membership of 680, so that we have about 500 families find some form of social well-being over the recent past. perhaps in keeping with the development of other social activities in Clydebank, we have developed an extensive lounge to bridge that gap between merely playing golf and providing some other dimension of social enjoyment, so that the members now feel part of a family, in the sense that we don't merely come up to play a restricted game of golf, we come up to play and enjoy all the activities associated with such a thriving golf club as ours.
Good percentage of the work done in this club is performed by ordinary members who are bankies, painters, electricians, tradesmen, guys that come along and say, well, we'll help you out, and they do tradesmen's work for us. But these are all bankies, these are all ordinary, everyday working members of the club.
You can take them out to any category, the professions, the industry, anything you like, they're all here.
We had quite a number of characters, even in the golf club here. We had a little stout fellow who used to work in Singer, Joe Cameron, who in his heyday was a real character. I mean, he was the man who walked in. He would walk in from the 8th hole, and when he was getting older, and somebody would say to him, well, are you tired, Joe? No, he says, I've played the right number of strokes. And he would just walk in out of the clubhouse.
One character is this friend of yours, Cliff Hanley. He went on to the first tee one day, and he was remembering what he said when he joined the club. There was 600 members, and every one of them tried to educate him in the way to play golf. And he went down onto that first tee, and he started thinking all the things that he'd do to keep his toes in his head, doing his hands and his thumb round the right way. And he said he was doing it when he heard somebody saying, that wee so-and-so will never hit it, it's too deformed.
We'll definitely finish off now, ladies and gentlemen. That Lochnagar. Well, it's Lochnagar, so here we go.
These are the practical fellas who built the country in the last 100 years. The road to the Isles means nothing to me. The road to John Brown's or the road to Singer's is very much more important.
I couldn't say I was anything else but a Scot. Talk about the weather, but I mean, it's the good weather that gives us the good complexions.